most of you have, say, iPhones or something like that in your pocket. Take a look at them. For example, they have in them a GPS. Where'd the GPS come from? It was created by the U.S. Navy, the Navistar program. It has microelectronics, software, hardware, almost all created for decades, mostly in the state sector, often in the U.S. Pentagon funding, here the counterpart. Taxpayers pay for this because they think they're protecting their security. That's what they're told. But in fact, the government doesn't care about your security. What it cares is about its own power and security for corporate power. And the way the system works is the taxpayer takes the risks, carries out the investment for decades, literally decades. Finally, something may come out which is profitable, and then the profit goes to the private sector. If we had anything remotely like capitalist systems, we don't, they would adhere to the capitalist principle that if an investor takes risks and invests and waits and takes risky steps, and if something comes out of it, the profit goes back to the investor. That's not the way it works here. The profit goes to people who had nothing to do with it. The risks are taken by you, often through the Pentagon and comparable systems, and if anything comes out, the profits go to Microsoft and Apple. Now, they didn't create it. They take it. It's given to them. And it literally is decades. So computers were the computer market, personal computer market, became viable in 1977, I think it was. Apple was the first. That was about 30 years after the development of computers, almost all in the state sector, like in the building where I work. And if you buy pharmaceuticals, let's say, the basic research and development is pretty much done in the state sector. Places like probably the biology lab right here probably gets government funding, grants. And that's all across the board. When you look back at these, I mentioned the Trans-Pacific Partnership. One part of that was leaked by WikiLeaks. It's secret except for the corporate lawyers and lobbyists. But one part was leaked. It was the part on intellectual property. Intellectual property is a polite term, a kind of a euphemism for government instituted monopoly pricing rights. That's what it really means. It means extraordinarily high patent rights, which have never existed in history, for the pharmaceutical corporations and some other corporations. That's to keep the price of drugs up and make profits astronomical. Now there's a pretext. The pharmaceutical corporations say, look, we need that for research and development. Well, that's been investigated. Turns out that probably at least half of the R&D is not done by the pharmaceutical corporations at all. It's done by the state sector and so on. And that's an underestimate, because if you take a close look, the part that's done by the pharmaceutical corporations is towards the marketing end, like, flip around a molecule to get a new drug. But the basic research, the hard, costly, risky research, that's done by people like you. You pay for it through your taxes. And the pharmaceutical corporations rip off the profit. Actually, there is a study one study by a very good American economist, Dean Baker, who estimated what would happen if R&D was 100% funded by the public, and the pharmaceutical corporations were compelled to go on the market to sell what they produce. It turns out there'd be a colossal saving for the public, and of course a sharp reduction in profits of the big industries. That's intellectual property. That's the part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that was leaked.